I want to tell you about a crime blogger named Leah Mercer, who thought she was just chasing clicks when she reopened a cold case from 12 years ago. But by the end of it, Leah wasn't writing about murders anymore. She was part of one. It all began when Leah moved into a small town in Vermont, a place called Ashbrook. Quiet, forest-lined streets, one diner, one gas station, and secrets older than the cracked bricks of the police station. She had just quit her job at a news outlet to start her true crime Substack, Crimes Unburied. Her idea was simple: write one cold case each week and post every Friday. She wasn't expecting much, until she stumbled on the Midwinter Murders. In 2012, 5 people were killed in the same town over 5 weeks. All of them were found posed like mannequins. No signs of trauma, no known links between them. And just like that, it stopped. The town police never figured it out. Leah was intrigued. 5 bodies, no suspects, and no motive. It was perfect material. She started digging. She visited old archives, collected interviews, analyzed old autopsy reports. The more she uncovered, the stranger it got. Each victim had a common detail: a red thread tied around the left pinky. No one had ever reported that. Somehow, it had slipped through the cracks. She put it all together and posted her first article, The Midwinter Murders, Clues the Police Missed. It went viral overnight, and the next morning, a 6th body appeared in Ashbrook, killed the exact same way. The body was found outside the Ashbrook Library. Emily Rhodes, 24, a college dropout who worked part-time at the front desk. She hadn't gone missing. She had just been out for a walk the night before. Leah stared at the photo of Emily's body, sent anonymously to her inbox, just like the others from 2012. Hands folded over the stomach, eyes wide open, a red thread tied tightly around the pinky finger. It wasn't a coincidence. The killer had seen her article. Local police reopened the Midwinter case. Leah was questioned, of course, but she had an airtight alibi. She'd been live streaming when Emily died. And weirdly, the police didn't seem that alarmed, almost like they were afraid of stirring up something older than themselves. Leah started to suspect that the case wasn't just cold. It had been intentionally buried. She posted the second part of her investigation. What the police won't say about Ashbrook's coldest case. It got 80,000 reads in a day. 3 days later, another body, Simon Greaves, 33, mechanic, found in his garage. Same pose, same red thread. But here's the catch. The email with the photo of Simon's body arrived before police discovered it. And it wasn't just sent to Leah. It was scheduled to go live on her blog's backend at exactly 9 a.m. The same minute Simon's body was reported. Whoever was doing this wasn't just killing. They were planning around her deadlines. Leah was no longer just a writer. She was bait. She checked the timestamps. Her posts went out every Friday at 9 a.m. The killer was aligning murders to her publishing schedule, as if her articles were invitations, or worse, instructions. She went to the Ashbrook PD again, demanding answers. That's when she met Detective Marlowe, a grizzled man with tired eyes who had worked the original Midwinter case in 2012. He told her something strange. We had a suspect once, no proof, just feelings. He knew too much. A guy named Daniel Ivers. He was a local reporter back then, ran a weekly newsletter. Leah's stomach dropped. She hadn't heard of Daniel. Not until now. Marlowe continued. Daniel died before the 5th murder. Suicide. But the 5th victim died a day after he jumped. It didn't make sense then. Still doesn't. That night, Leah dug deeper and found Daniel's old newsletters, stored on an old forum archive. Weekly posts, each written in chilling detail about the Midwinter killings. Days before they happened. She cross-checked them. Dates. Victims. Even the red thread. Daniel had been predicting the murders, just like she was now. Then came the worst part. In one of his final entries, he wrote, I don't write the stories. They write themselves. That week, Leah didn't want to publish anything. She delayed her next post, broke her routine, locked herself inside her apartment. But at 9 a.m. sharp, her blog updated automatically with a draft she never wrote. Title, Victim number 8, the mailman. She ran to the street. Her mailman's van had crashed into a telephone pole. The door was open, and inside, the body, red thread, folded hands, dead eyes staring. The killer wasn't copying her posts. The posts were creating the murders. Leah was spiraling. How did that post get published? She hadn't typed a single word, yet the draft was unmistakably hers. Same tone, same phrasing. It even used her signature sign-off. Until next crime. She tried deleting the blog. Nothing worked. She logged into the back end. Each upcoming Friday already had a scheduled post. Uneditable, locked in. Titled with names she didn't recognize. It was as if the website itself had become haunted. Or hijacked. Leah reached out to a cybersecurity expert friend, Jasper, who traced the origin of the site's code. What he found chilled him. Leah, this blog isn't running off any known server. The IP is corrupted, like it's been bounced through a dozen non-existent locations, and your published dates go 10 years into the future. She asked him to wipe the site entirely. Jasper tried, and vanished the next day. Guess what showed up on her blog? Victim number 9, the hacker. Leah broke down. She stopped eating, barely slept. She pinned up printouts of every scheduled post, cross-checked dates, names, locations. They all matched people she'd brushed past in Ashbrook. The posts were choosing victims around her, neighbors, baristas, repairmen. It wasn't random. It was personal, desperate. She tried posting gibberish, just random characters and nonsense. But at 9 a.m., the blog auto-corrected itself, converted her nonsense into clean paragraphs. Another murder, another thread. She wasn't in control of her writing anymore. Something or someone was using her. Then came the post she dreaded most. Final entry, the writer. Scheduled for next Friday. Leah had 6 days left. 6 days before she became the final entry in a horror story she never meant to write. She tried everything, changing IPs, using burner laptops, even contacting paranormal experts. One of them, a reclusive occultist named Dr. Weller, told her something that made a sick kind of sense. There are spirits that don't possess people. They possess ideas, stories, and once you become their writer, you are bound to finish their tale. According to Weller, what Leah had tapped into wasn't just a cold case. It was a narrative parasite, a pattern looking for a voice, a deadly formula that needed someone to give it structure. Daniel Ivers had been the host in 2012. Now, it was Leah. And if the final entry was truly hers, it wouldn't stop with her death. The parasite would jump again, to the next curious storyteller. Another voice, another series. She had to stop it before it spread. So she did something no one expected. She wrote a fake post, a total fabrication. She titled it, Victim, though order 10, Me. She described her own staged death, location, time, even crime scene details. She made it go live early, on a Monday, not Friday. Then she hid in an abandoned lodge outside town. No phones, no Wi-Fi. She waited. The next morning, police found a body at the exact spot she described. Only it wasn't hers. It was Detective Marlowe. Threaded pinky, folded hands, empty stare. The killer, or the entity, had rejected her decoy because it already knew the real ending. The final Friday arrived. 9 a.m. approached like a guillotine. Leah sat at her desk, surrounded by candles, her laptop open. The scheduled post was locked in. Title, final entry, the writer. She couldn't edit it, couldn't delete it. But then, a thought. What if the blog didn't need deletion? What if it needed a rewritten ending? At 8:52 a.m., she opened a blank post and began typing. Not with fear, but with resolve. She wrote a different narrative. Not about a death, but a confession. She told the story of the Midwinter Murders, of how the killer wasn't a person, but an idea that infected writers. She exposed the parasite for what it was. A looping horror script feeding off attention, off curiosity, off the page. She titled it, This Story Ends Here. She finished at 8:59 a.m., and hit publish. The site glitched. The screen went black. Her heart pounded. She waited for a knock on the door, for the thread, for the click of a camera capturing her body. But nothing came. No new post appeared. No body was found. She survived. The headlines the next week were different. Writer cancels cold case curse. Deadline murders, blog taken offline. Mysteriously. No one else died. Leah disappeared from public view. She moved to a coastal town under a new name. She never wrote again. But sometimes, when she opens her browser late at night, her homepage flickers for just a second. A post appears and vanishes. The story isn't over. And in the archive folder of her laptop, a file she never created appears again and again. Final entry.docx, unopened, unread. Still waiting for a deadline. The wind howled like a wounded beast across Yaroslavsky Station. Snow fell in slow, heavy spirals as travelers bundled in thick coats bustled through the dimly lit terminal. Among them stood Clara Evans, an American travel journalist, her gloved hand gripping a notepad, a carry-on bag slung over her shoulder. She checked her watch, 11:57 p.m. Her train, the Midnight Express, was already waiting. Not on track 12 like the ticket said, but on track 13, a platform that, according to the faded station map, didn't officially exist. A porter with a hollow face and an old Ushanka hat motioned her wordlessly toward the shadowed platform. The man's eyes never quite met hers. "Is this the Trans-Siberian line to Irkutsk?" Clara asked, brushing a layer of snow from her coat. The porter nodded once, then vanished into the drifting snow. The train sat in eerie silence, an older model with frosted windows and steel sides that gleamed dully beneath the station lights. It looked like it had been untouched since the Soviet era. Clara hesitated. Something about the silence felt off. Still, her job was to experience the unusual, and she had survived far worse in Albania and Bolivia. She climbed aboard. Inside, the corridor smelled of mothballs and metal. The conductor, a pale woman in a starched gray uniform, punched Clara's ticket without a word. Her name tag was blank. Her eyes were the color of stagnant water. "Carriage 6, she said flatly, handing the stub back. As Clara walked toward her assigned cabin, her boots echoing along the narrow corridor, she passed only 4 other passengers: an elderly German man reading a pocket Bible, a Russian woman knitting with surgical precision, a young backpacker sleeping with his head against the glass, and a man in a charcoal suit who stared straight ahead without blinking. No one acknowledged her. She entered cabin 6B and locked the door behind her. Inside, the cabin was cold, unnaturally so. She tried adjusting the radiator. It was already on full. From her window, the city lights of Moscow faded as the train began to pull away, swallowed by the vast white wilderness beyond. The train gave a low, aching groan, then another. It didn't feel like motion. It felt like sinking. Hours passed. Clara tried to sleep, but something kept her awake. It wasn't the sound. The train was eerily silent. No rattling, no engine noise, just the occasional groan, like metal being pulled apart in slow motion. She sat up and checked her phone. No service, no Wi-Fi, not even GPS. That's when she heard it. A knock. 3 soft knocks on her cabin door. She froze. "Who is it?" she called. No reply. She opened the door a crack. The corridor was empty, silent and still. Only the flickering overhead bulbs hummed faintly. Clara leaned out. Then she saw it. Cabin 6C, which had been empty, now had its door slightly open. A shadow moved inside. She stepped into the hallway. "Hello?" she called. "Is someone there?" Nothing. The train shuddered. Not like turbulence. This was deeper, like something massive brushing against it from outside. Clara backed away from the cabin and returned to her room. She shut the door, locked it, and drew the curtains. Her heart thudded in her chest. She scribbled into her notebook. Strange passengers. Wrong platform. Silent ride. Carriage 6 has a shadow. Then she underlined one word. Wrong. In the conductor's booth at the front of the train, the pale woman stared at the old-fashioned gauges and dials. Every single one of them read. So, speed, distance, pressure, all 0. And yet the train moved. She looked into the security monitor. Carriage 6 flickered in static. One by one, the lights in that carriage went out. The train hummed beneath her feet, though the sound felt more like an echo from deep below than any true mechanical vibration. Clara barely slept. She awoke from uneasy half-dreams where faces looked at her from outside the window, pale and breathless, their mouths moving but no sound escaping. She sat up in her bunk. Still snow outside. Still night, but it felt like too long had passed. Slipping on her coat, Clara stepped into the corridor. The lights had dimmed to a yellow flicker, barely illuminating the length of carriage 6. As she passed cabin 6C again, she noticed the door had been fully shut. There was no sign anyone had ever been inside. She looked back. Cabin 6A, the old man with the Bible, his door was open. Inside, he sat stiffly on his bunk, staring at the pages. Not reading, just staring. "Hi," Clara said gently. "I think we may have gotten on the wrong train." The man looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed and moist. "This isn't a train," he whispered. "It's a procession." "A what?" But he just turned his gaze back to the book. The pages were blank. Clara backed away, unsettled. In the next cabin, the Russian woman with the knitting needles sat with her work on her lap. She was whispering something over and over in her native tongue. Clara caught the word "Kyort," which meant devil. Clara knocked gently. The woman looked up, startled. "Why doesn't this train stop?" Clara asked. The woman's hands trembled. "Because we didn't board it. We were chosen." Clara opened her mouth to respond, but a sharp scream pierced the air from the other end of the carriage. The young backpacker, cabin 6D, his door was wide open, and he was gone. His backpack was still there, zipped, jacket on the hook, but he had vanished without a sound. The conductor came walking down the corridor, still emotionless, still pale. "I need to report a missing passenger," Clara said, pointing. "That boy was here. He's just gone." The conductor looked into the cabin. "There is no record of any such passenger." Clara blinked. "I saw him. He was here. His bag is—" "That bag belongs to you now," the conductor said. "Please return to your cabin." What?" The conductor placed a hand on Clara's shoulder, cold as ice. "The train does not stop. Not yet." She turned and walked away. Back in her cabin, Clara unzipped the backpack. Inside was a journal. She flipped through it. Dozens of pages filled with frantic, scrawled handwriting. "They don't breathe. They don't blink. The windows show snow, but we've been circling the same trees for hours. There is no time. There is no conductor. This train doesn't stop because it's not going anywhere. Carriage 6 is cursed. We boarded at different stations, different years, different decades. I met a man who boarded this train in 1974. He hasn't aged." One sentence was underlined several times. "Track 13 is not a route. It's a sentence." Suddenly, the train jolted violently. Clara was thrown sideways against the wall. Lights sputtered. The metal groan deepened, like something tearing through layers of earth. She stumbled out into the corridor again. The Russian woman's cabin was now open. Empty. Knitting needles on the floor. Yarn unraveling in loops across the hallway. Two gone. Only Clara and the old man remained. She turned to look out the window and gasped. The trees outside were not trees, not anymore. They looked like twisted arms, reaching skyward in frozen agony. The landscape had become warped, stretched. Shadows moved between the snow, crawling slowly toward the train. Clara rushed back toward the conductor's booth. The door at the end of the carriage was locked. She pounded on it. "Open up! What is this? What is this train?" A voice replied from behind her. "You shouldn't have boarded alone." She spun. The man in the charcoal suit stood at the far end of the corridor, She hadn't seen him move. She hadn't heard a door open. "Who are you?" Clara asked. "I'm just a passenger," he said. "Like you. Only I've been here. Longer." He stepped forward. Carriage 6 doesn't follow the rules of the others. Time folds here. Memory phrase. Reality gives way to something older. Clara backed up. "I want to get off." "You will," he said, smiling faintly. "Eventually, we all do. One by one." He gestured toward the cabins. "Look around. We're being claimed." She narrowed her eyes. "Claimed by what?" But the lights went out. Completely this time. Pitch black. Then, whispers. Thousands of them. The darkness inside Carriage 6 was so complete, it smothered thought. Clara stood still, too afraid to even breathe. Then the whispering returned. Dry voices crawling along the edges of her mind. She turned toward where the man in the charcoal suit had stood. "Hello?" she whispered. Silence. She fumbled through her coat pocket for her phone. Still no signal, but the flashlight flickered on. The cone of light cut a small circle through the pitch black, illuminating only the nearest wall and a faded emergency sign in Russian. She turned it slowly, pointing it back toward where the man had been. He was gone. Not a sound. No footstep. No trace. Only one thing remained. On the floor, neatly folded, was his suit. His shoes placed carefully beneath it. No blood, no torn fabric, just gone. Clara stared, heart pounding. She began backing down the hallway. No. This isn't real. She reached cabin 6A. The old man was still there, but now his eyes were wide. He stood at the doorframe muttering something beneath his breath in German, his hands trembling. She shined the light toward him. "Did you see that man? The one in the suit?" The old man shook his head slowly. "I told you, it's a procession. We are passengers, yes, but also sacrifices." "What the hell does that mean?" He took out a torn photo from his coat pocket. A black and white picture of a train car, passengers smiling. The photo was dated March 3rd, 1974. "That's this train," he said. "That's Carriage 6. Clara looked closely. The numbers matched. But some of the faces in the photo, they were the same people from this very ride. The Russian woman, the backpacker, even the man in the suit. But the photo was from over 50 years ago. Clara stumbled back. "This is insane." "I've tried to leave," the old man whispered. "Every time the doors open, it's the same landscape, the same cursed forest. I've aged 10 years, or maybe none. I don't know anymore. I've forgotten the names of my children." A rattling sound echoed from the far end of the carriage. Clara spun, raising her flashlight. The corridor beyond Carriage 6 was changing. The walls rippled like water. Metal groaned. The windows warped inward, as if pulled by some enormous pressure outside. "Do you hear that?" the old man whispered. A sound like something dragging along the roof, something with claws. They both turned toward the door that led to the next carriage. It was open, not swinging, not pushed, but waiting. "No," the old man murmured, backing into his cabin. "It's coming again." Clara stepped forward, shining the light into the gap between Carriage 6 and the next. There should have been a connecting platform, but instead, it was only black. A chasm. No floor, no sky, no snow, just blackness, pulsing like something alive. She heard a creak behind her. Turning, cabin 6E, empty until now, was open. A child stood inside, maybe 5 years old, dirty, barefoot, eyes sunken deep into her skull. She looked straight at Clara. "Did you take it?" the girl asked. "Take what?" The child raised a shaking hand and pointed at Clara's chest. Clara looked down. The backpack she'd taken, the missing boy's journal, was now gone. "What?" The child stepped into the hallway, walking slowly. "If you take what's theirs, it takes something back." Suddenly, the flashlight flickered. The hallway behind the girl twisted. The metal floor tilted for just a second, and the child screamed, not in fear, but in rage. Then she was yanked upward, her feet leaving the floor, straight into the ceiling. No hole, no trapdoor, no exit. She simply vanished, sucked into the dark. Clara ran back to her cabin, locked the door, threw herself onto the bunk. Her flashlight died. Total darkness again. Then, static. Soft, faint, like an old radio tuning in from somewhere beneath the train. A voice whispered, crackling, "Carriage 6. Prepare for detachment." She screamed and slammed her fists against the wall. This is not real. But outside the window, the landscape had changed again. The trees were upside down, and their roots were writhing. Far ahead, in the conductor's booth, the pale woman adjusted the throttle. A single lever was pulled down. A rusted panel opened with a hiss. She removed a key, ancient iron, with a tooth-like hook, and inserted it into the detachment gear labeled Carriage 6, obsolete. A red light turned on. Decoupling sequence initiated. She said nothing, just turned the key. A thunderous clank jolted Clara awake. The floor beneath her tilted sharply to the right. She slammed into the cabin wall, gasping. Then, stillness, not the kind that settles after a storm. This was hollow, too quiet, like being buried alive. She sat up slowly. No hum of the engine, no screech of wheels on track. She reached for the cabin door and opened it. The hallway of Carriage 6 was crooked now, tilted, fractured, like the car had been dropped from a height. The window at the end showed no snowstorm, no train ahead. Nothing. Clara stumbled down the corridor, breath fogging. She opened the door to the next carriage. Only blackness stared back. Track 13 had left Carriage 6 behind, and taken the rest of the train with it. In the conductor's cabin, the pale woman reached for a small, leather-bound book labeled Manifest. She drew a red line across the name Clara Renner. Then she whispered, "One remains. The witness." Inside the now disconnected Carriage 6, Clara gathered her things, heart racing. The old man was gone. So was the child, the suit, all of it. Cabin doors now hung open. She checked every room, empty, until she reached 6B. Inside was a passenger she didn't remember seeing before. A man in an old military uniform. Gray beard. Dead stare. He turned his head slowly. "What year is it?" 2025. The man closed his eyes. "They took 1944 from me. I was asleep. They woke me only when this place needed something to remember what death tastes like." Clara backed away. "I don't know what this is, but I'm getting off this thing." "You don't get off the death track," he said. "You become part of it." Suddenly, the cabin lights flickered. For the first time, power surged back through the carriage. A jolt of electricity buzzed through the walls. The radio above the intercom hissed, and a voice echoed, "Reattachment denied. Final purge commencing." The floor began to quake. The windows blurred with static. Clara grabbed her phone. Still no signal. Then, something slammed into the carriage from below. Once, twice, a third time. The man in the military uniform stood and faced the ceiling. He whispered, "It's hungry now." The walls began to bleed. Walls. Actual blood, from the seams, trickling downward in thin, pulsating lines. And from beneath the carriage, a sound like metal being chewed. Back in the main train, the Russian woman crossed herself and looked at the empty space where Carriage 6 had been. She asked the conductor in a shaky voice, "Where did they go?" The pale woman simply replied, "They are processed." "What does that mean?" "You asked to forget. The cost is their memory." Clara screamed as the floor of Carriage 6 peeled open like a sardine can. Below was no track, no wheels, only a black, pulsing void, and in it, hands, dozens, hundreds, pale arms reaching upward from the dark, all grasping for her. The radio repeated, "Final purge. Initiated." She ran. To the end of the car. The emergency exit. She hit the latch. It opened. But outside was not snow, nor sky, just a narrow wooden platform in the middle of nowhere. And beyond that, another train. Rusty. Burned. Abandoned. Sitting alone on a different track across the void. The same number painted on its side. 13, but older, as if it had died long ago. The wind howled. The voices returned, now loud and clear. One of us. One of us. One of us. Clara looked down. Her reflection on the window was not hers anymore. It wore the suit. It smiled. She screamed and jumped onto the platform. Carriage 6 groaned behind her. The entire car collapsed inward, consumed by the black hands, dragged into the void. Gone. Clara turned and ran toward the rusted, burned-out train. She climbed into it. Inside were rows of abandoned shoes, scattered belongings, dozens of photo ID cards nailed to the walls. Each one bore the name of a missing person. She found hers, Clara Renner. Next to it, written in red, Passenger 139, witness class, awaiting recall. The lights inside this corpse train flickered on. A screen powered up. One message blinked. Track 13. Re-entry 01254. She was not free. This was the holding car. She had less than 13 minutes before the train returned, and she'd be on it again. Clara paced the length of the derelict train, panic pounding behind her eyes. The countdown on the screen blinked coldly. 09:17. She tried the emergency windows, jammed shut. The main exit sealed. Every attempt to escape the corpse train ended with failure and the hollow echo of her breath in the cold metal shell. Then came a sound, not mechanical. Breathing. From the next carriage. She moved cautiously toward it, every step on the rusted floor groaning beneath her. She pushed the dividing door open. Inside, the lights buzzed dimly above a circle of passengers, all sitting perfectly still, eyes wide open, unmoving. Each of them was frozen in the moment of death. One woman still clutched her throat, mouth open in a silent scream. A child curled in a seat, eyes rolled back. A man, his hands outstretched as if pushing someone away. Then, Clara saw herself. Another version of her, slumped in a corner seat, dried blood down her face, a gash on the side of her temple, eyes open, staring directly at her. She stepped closer. Suddenly, the dead Clara's lips moved, only slightly, but enough to whisper, "They never let you leave." Then the lights blew out. Darkness. Back in the living train, the pale conductor looked down at her pocket watch. She tapped it once, and her lips curled into a cold smile. Time folds now. The Russian woman beside her trembled. "Are you human?" The conductor's eyes shifted, briefly, revealing pitch-black irises like endless tunnels. No. In the dark, Clara used her phone's flashlight. All the bodies were gone, except the version of herself. And now, that version was standing, staring at her. Clara backed away. "What do you want?" The doppelganger spoke slowly. "You were meant to forget. You looked back." Clara shook her head. "I didn't ask for any of this, but someone else did." From behind the double, a third Clara emerged. This one wore a white hospital gown, bald, tubes still trailing from her arms. Her voice was weaker. "You agreed, before you died, to be the witness." Clara screamed, "I'm not dead." Both versions stared, then in unison, "Not yet." 2:04. The rusted corpse train rumbled. It was moving. Back onto the track. Back to track 13. Clara ran. She stumbled into the last car, which was no longer a car at all, but a replica of the interrogation room from her dream, a table, a single chair, and the suit. He sat across from her once again, hands folded. "I told you the truth," he said calmly. "No one rides without a choice. Even remembering that you were on this train was your decision." "I didn't decide anything," she growled. "You put me here." "No," he replied. "You did. Before the accident. Before your final breath in the ambulance, you signed the contract. Memory exchange for another chance. You took the ride." Clara's hands trembled. "I never—" He slid a document across the table. It had her signature. Her heartbeat quickened. A flash of memory hit her like a truck. The crash. Her boyfriend screaming. the emergency lights, the medics. Then a whisper from the pale conductor. You may forget all of this, and live, or remember, and become the next vessel. 30. Outside, the tracks realigned. The black void shimmered. The living train and the corpse train were about to overlap. Time for the 13th return. The train doors opened. Steam poured in, and Clara saw them. The passengers she had met, alive again, smiling, eyes bright, as if the nightmare had never happened. The suit walked beside her now. You have one final choice, Clara. She turned to him. Step back on the train, forget everything, and live your life again with no memory of this place. Or, stay off, keep the truth, and never wake up again. She looked at the door, the snowstorm beyond it, the false peace of ignorance. She closed her eyes and stepped forward. She awoke on a hospital bed, doctors around her, machines beeping. She's back, one of them said. She made it. Her mother cried beside her. Clara gasped for air, alive. But across the city, a different story was unfolding. A man in a suit stepped into a subway station, his face cold, his smile perfect. He reached for a rusted panel beside a closed-off platform and whispered, Track 13, boarding once more. A hidden elevator began to descend, and the lights dimmed. 2 weeks later, Clara sat on a park bench under a bright, cloudless sky. Children played nearby. Joggers passed. The world felt normal again. Too normal. She sipped her coffee with shaking hands, watching shadows that didn't belong to anything. Her therapist told her she was experiencing post-traumatic hallucinations. But Clara knew better. Every time she blinked, she saw the flicker of train lights behind her lids. And every time she dreamed, she was back on the train. One night, Clara found a flyer on her windshield. The witness must ride, testimonies of the dead, an anonymous author, a date, a location. She froze. It was her story. Someone else knew. That night, Clara returned to the old station, the same one from before, except now, it was open. Track 13 had been restored, listed on the display board for the first time in over a decade. A single train was there, sleek, silent, and dark. The same pale conductor stood waiting. No emotion, no question, only a gesture. Bored. Inside the train, the lights were dim and gold-tinted. Clara walked slowly, each step echoing like a heartbeat. She entered a compartment already filled. The Russian woman from before, the silent man in overalls, even the teenage boy with bleeding eyes, all looked healthy, normal, but no one spoke. Then the conductor came down the aisle, handing each of them a mirror. You will now remember your reflection, she said. Clara looked down at hers, but it wasn't her face. It was the third version of her, the one in the hospital gown. Bald, dying. Suddenly it clicked. They weren't multiple versions of her. They were phases. Past Clara, present Clara, and the witness. She was never meant to survive. She was the one chosen to carry the memory, because no one else would. The train wasn't a purgatory. It was a vault of secrets, of final thoughts, of unresolved deaths. And she had been chosen to bear the burden. The suit appeared again, sitting across from her. We always choose one per generation, he said. Someone who broke the rules. Someone who asked to understand death before it came. You said I'd live, she whispered. You are. He smiled. But now you are part of the track, the bridge between realms, the witness. The train screeched to a halt, not at a station, not anywhere real, but outside a mirror dimension of the city, reflected in cold chrome. From there, Clara saw hundreds of parallel trains, each on their own track, thousands of versions of reality, people riding in and out of choices they never knew they made. You can't change them, the conductor said, but you'll watch, record, Remember. In the final scene, Clara walked through the carriages, each filled with lost souls, moments frozen before their deaths. One man stood in a flooded elevator, a woman caught in a burning hospital room, a boy staring at a gun, and in each she saw something new. Choice. At the last car there was a chair with her name etched on it. Witness 13. She sat, closed her eyes, and whispered, "I remember." The train doors sealed, and track 13 vanished again from the city records. 1 year later, a new subway station opened in a major city overseas. On the schedule board, someone noticed a strange, late-night addition. Track 13, one way, no return. When asked, the transit authority denied its existence, but cameras caught a man in a dark suit, smiling, boarding an empty train. Behind him, a new passenger looked back once, then vanished.